Hi there, and welcome to the Amy Kunkle Audio Hour. On today's episode, I'm going to be covering the last couple chapters in my book, Unbound Allegiance, Finding Freedom in a Truth of Your Own. And the reason that I am doing these summary episodes is primarily because I am a new author. No one really knows what to expect from me. I didn't even really know what to expect from writing my first book. And so I cover just in audio form because my Audible book is not finished yet. Just an easy way to consume what my book is about. Each podcast that I've done so far covers a little bit about each chapter. And it's kind of a chronological journey as I go through my awakening. And I also share in the chapters I'm going to cover on this episode just how to apply it to your own life. So if you haven't picked up my book, it is available on Amazon, and I would love for you to have it. It has been on sale recently for $11.11. And I think by the time this podcast airs, that sale might be over. Maybe I'll extend it through the weekend. But go ahead and hop over there and pick up a copy of my book. And I would really appreciate any reviews on Amazon and sharing it. If you've bought it, you can share online and tag Unbound Allegiance, tag Amy Kunkle, or Amy Kunkle Creative. I would just love that very much. So let's get on to today's episode. I will be covering chapter 13, 14, and 15. And chapter 13 is about presence. And really, finally, in my awakening journey, getting to the place where I am really understanding what it means to live in the present moment, as in what Eckhart Tolle refers to as present moment awareness, where the past is just a memory in our mind and the future is really just hasn't happened yet, and no need to really worry about it, but really focusing on living in the present moment. And I also was able to meet Jess Lively, who has been a virtual mentor of mine, and she was hosting a workshop in Detroit. And so I signed up and went up to that workshop, and I share in this chapter basically what finally clicked for me, and that was this idea of spiral dynamics, and I talk about it in the introduction, but it's really just looking at the different levels of consciousness. And I was able to sort of pinpoint where I was for a lot of my life, and then maybe see how I've grown and evolved and where I am now. But I share in this chapter how I did an inner voice interview workshop with Jess Lively, where one of her methods is to ask yourself or your inner voice questions. And you, like when you talk to yourself, you say like, okay, self, what do I want to eat today? And you kind of stay in that conscious thinking mind. But when you connect to your intuition or your inner voice, you let that mind kind of slow down and you connect to the deepness, like the deeper inner self. So what Jess does in her inner voice work is she helps you to connect to that deeper inner voice that you have. And so I share on a previous podcast, the recording, if you're interested, and I'll link that up if I can in the show notes to the episode I posted on the Amy Kunkle Audio Hour. And so we did inner voice work, and she helped me to see that even though I have evolved out of my consciousness that I spent 40 years of my life in, that is the religion, the authoritative kind of God, all of that. Like, I spent 40 years in that kind of level of consciousness and evolution. But what I am doing is I've evolved past that, but I'm looking through basically like that perspective still. And I'm referring to a lot of things from that perspective because it's still so ingrained in me. And so what she helped me to see was that I was kind of making a religion out of this new way of thinking. And so I share about meeting Jess Lively, about all of this in this chapter. And I feel like it was just very timely. And a lot of, I think when you flow with your intuition and you kind of go with the flow of the universe, you see things unfold perfectly. You see the teacher appearing at the right time, as that quote goes. And so for me, I feel like a lot of things were really coming together and finally clicking at the right time in my life. And hopefully you see that in your own life as well. This leads into a story that I talk about where it was actually a dream that I'm sharing. And if you follow me on Instagram, I actually have this dream in the highlights of my Instagram stories. And I talk about how I had a dream with the other person I recognized in it was Aubrey Marcus, and he is a kind of like famous influencer that I don't know him personally, but he appeared in my dream. And the message of the dream was that everyone is here on this planet in this experience everyone is supposed to have their own experience. And so for me, I was kind of coming off of wrapping up my whole awakening experience. The 2 years was culminating, and not that you have to have a 2-year awakening, but I feel like I was finally kind of starting to integrate everything into my life. And I was looking around and seeing other people in my life who were not waking up and who are not realizing these things that I was realizing. And so the message from my unconscious in that dream was that everyone is here to have their own experience, and it's okay what other people's experiences, that's what they chose to have in this lifetime. So I also talk about how Jess Lively shared from the book A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and the subtitle of that book is Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And I feel like that's always a struggle for people, is like, what am I here for? Like, what is this big thing that I'm here to do with my life, my job, or my career? And so after hearing Jess Lively talk about this book so much, I had to go and read it finally, because I really do love Eckhart Tolle. And so it helped me to realize that when you're in alignment with your soul, it's almost like when you stop resisting the present moment, when you're just okay with where you are right now in life, then you are fulfilling your purpose. And that is huge, I think. As a mom, I have days where I just don't know if this is why I'm here, and if I should be doing more, if I should be fulfilling this career as an architect that I've had kind of in my life. But I feel like the realization is that you are exactly where you need to be. And if you can just accept where you are right now, then you are fulfilling your life's purpose. And I also feel like by writing this book, I have shared the story of my awakening. And that all kind of came about by just this pull inside my soul that said, just write about it. I don't know who's going to hear it, who's going to read it, who it will impact. I just knew I had to write it. And in that moment, that was my purpose. And so I highly recommend Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And really just appreciate Jess Lively in her event because she was also heavily influenced by Eckhart Tolle. I appreciate her going over some of the concepts that he shares. So I will move on because I've talked way too much about chapter 13. So chapter 14 is kind of like my culmination. I talk about the hero's journey at the end of 13, and the hero's journey is this sort of a metaphor for this, any kind of awakening. You could have an awakening, or you could call it something other than an awakening, but it's really just overcoming something in your life and then learning the lesson from it and kind of integrating it or incorporating it into your life. And I talk about how like the Wizard of Oz was a hero's journey, and where Dorothy was looking for, I don't know. I'm going to skip that. Not going to go there, but the hero's journey is a theme through a lot of movies. Anyway, so I talk about how writing this book is sort of like me bringing to the world this elixir, this gift from me, is writing this book to share how I do this, how I have awareness. So I basically have 4 steps that you can implement in your own life. And I implement these in my life on a daily basis. So I say awakening and I say hero's journey, but it could have, a very, very small, it could be a very small thing in your life. It doesn't have to be, I always say, it doesn't have to be such a huge thing. It doesn't have to be a midlife crisis or a physical ailment or something. So my 4 steps I walk through in this chapter, and the first one is awareness, just kind of acknowledging the unconscious as Carl Jung talks about it, and being the observer of your thoughts and realizing that you create your own thoughts. You don't have to just let them swirl uncontrollably. You can have more awareness on your thoughts and more awareness in your life. And the next thing that I go through in this process is making space. And I feel like people don't have the bandwidth to have the quiet in order to make decisions in their life. They don't have the space in their calendar. They don't have the space mentally to really grow and change and evolve. And so a big part of my practice is really setting time aside each day to meditate, setting time aside each month to set intentions and observe my life and how it's going. And so really objectively observe my life. And so I make space intentionally for self-care and growth. And then the next thing is healing. I feel like that was one thing that I brought from my I was able to transition my midlife crisis into an awakening that actually had meaningful, lasting change. And so being able to see some of the things in the unconscious, maybe they're shadow kind of elements of your own psyche and your own life, but to know the tools that you can mitigate them, integrate them, even just bringing awareness to an attitude that's running unhealthily through your mind, and add a new thought in that is a healthy thought. So the last kind of piece of the puzzle, the practices that I implement, and I kind of implemented these through my awakening, is compassion. And that's to just get to the place where you still love and accept yourself, even when you maybe don't perform how you want to, or you don't live up to the expectation that you set for yourself, or you just don't want to do something. I feel like we are very hard on ourselves, and to just give yourself that bit of compassion can make all the difference. You can come out positive on the other side, and you really just need to give yourself that level of compassion. Oftentimes we give it to other people, we forgive, we allow people to move past something, but we hold ourselves to this higher standard and are often just in sort of an inner battle constantly because we're not living up to what we want to be, and we're not living in congruence with our highest self. And so having compassion on yourself and being able to just look through the eyes of love, as I kind of talk about in my book, knowing that everyone is just doing the best that they can, and that includes you. Chapter 15 is a very short chapter. It is my epilogue, and it's funny that I didn't want to write an introduction, but I ended up writing an epilogue. But this is really just my thank you so much for being here moment. And I do share kind of a fun story about an astrologist, and I figure I will let you read that when you get my book, because it's just a kind of end message to close the book. So that is the series on Unbound Allegiance. All 5 episodes are on my podcast now, so you can check them out. And I think they're all on YouTube as well. So if you prefer YouTube or enjoy watching over there, you can check out my new really dark hair for fall, because I tend to start changing with the seasons, keep changing with the seasons. And I just appreciate you listening and watching. And if you are interested in getting on my email list, I have a free bonus coming for that. And it's going to be a guide, like a mini guide for navigating growth and change in your life. So be watching for that in the next week or so, and I will be posting on social media when that's available. So thank you again so much for being here. I hope that you have a fabulous, amazing fall day. Bye.